Syria stands at the crossroads of history and heartbreak, a land where civilizations were born and flourished, a land where once all the empires have bowed to its cultural brilliance. But today, the atmosphere in Damascus is completely different. The scent of jasmine has been replaced with the war smoke. Behind every bullet ridden school and destroyed minarets, there lies a deeper story. A story where people have been trapped between the chaos and the tyranny. In this particular video session, we are going to understand about what happened to Syria in the last 20 years and how did or what future does it holds for the upcoming decades. Welcome to Universal Group of Institutions Bengaluru. Welcome to special series on the conflicts to watch out in 2025. In this particular video session, we are going to discuss about what happened to the Syria, how did it end up in the civil war, and what future does it holds for. See, the first thing, the if you look at the Syria, Syria was under the occupation of the French under the French mandate of the after the First World War. It gained independence in the year 1946. Later, through the various military coups, it ends under the one important political party, that is the Ba'athist political party. The Ba'athist political party is nothing but who wanted to spread the socialism, who wanted to combine the idea of a socialism with the Arab nationalism. So the Baathists took control over the Syria in the 1960s. Later, one particular individual gained more prominence that happens to be the Hafiz al-Assad. He becomes the president of the Syria in 1971 through the military coup. He went on to rule over Syria till his death in 2000. The people at that time thought that a democracy will be restored in this to the Syria. But in turn, his son Bashar al-Assad became the new de facto ruler. He became the new president. So the Syria became synonymous with al-Assad. The way the Saudi Arabia is synonymous with the house of Al Saud, or Qatar or Kuwait with the Al Thani, or Al Nayan with the UAE, or Al Maktoum with the Dubai. So Syria was under the control of the one individual or one house called as the Al Assad. So Bashar al Assad, as well as his father Hafiz al Assad, started to trample any voice that raised a question against the authority. So what we see is that a new wave swept across all the Arab world in the year 2011. That is called as the Arab Spring. Arab Spring was a movement where people started to question the authority, where people wanted to restore the democracy across the Arab world. It all started with a small country which is well known for its picturesque locations of the Star Wars, that is the Tunisia. So the Arab Spring or this particular pro-democratic movements spread across the entire Arab world. One such movement also entered into the Syria where they wanted Bashar al-Assad to step down, and they wanted to hold elections. But instead, what he does is he started to crush those democratic forces. The Western countries found the right time to intervene into this prolonged civil war. So what we see is that the Syria enters into the civil war where the different factions were supported by the different people. Can you see very clearly how the different forces Syrian government is being supported by the Russia. Syrian government was also being supported by the Iran, but the same Syrian government was also fighting the Syrian Democratic Forces, which is being backed by the United States of America. The Syrian Democratic Forces were also being backed by the Turkey. At the same time, we see a free Syrian army, which is also in war with the Syrian government. That means it became a bloody mess where the various Western countries started to ally with their own forces on the ground, and Syria entered into the civil war. From the 2012 to 2025, nearly at least 5 lakh people have died, and more than one third of the Syrian population has been displaced, and the people are refugees in their own homeland, or either they are into the Turkey, which hosts the largest number of the Syrian population. So what happens during this time? The one particular force became, overnight, they take over the control of the Syria, that is the Hayat al Tasi, that is the HTS. HTS, launches the surprise offensive. They first capture the Aleppo, and then they started to take control over the one by one the different nations. So finally, on the December 8, 2023, the HTS forces led by the Al Jolani, Muhammad Al Jolani, they captures the Damascus, and the Bashar al-Assad flees to the Moscow. So right now, what we see is that the his government, that is the HTS, is completely under the control of the Damascus and the majority areas of the Syria. So what are the reasons why the regime fell? First one happens to be the weak Syrian army, because the Assad relied more on the Russian air force as well as the Iranian support. But what happened is, with the breakout of the war between the Ukraine and Russia, Russia has diverted majority of its resources to the Ukraine. And moreover, with the Gaza and the Israel and the Palestine conflict, we see that the Lebanon started to divert more of its uh, resources towards the Israel. But the same Lebanon is being funded by the Iran itself. So the Iran and the Syria, which were supporting the Assad, they entangled in their own wars. Iran with the Israel, and similarly Russia with the Ukraine. And moreover, the as a result of this, once you lose the support of these military powers, the backers of the Assad, they started to weaken up. As a result, the forces, the HTS forces were able to capture. So what we see right now, as I said very clearly, the HTS, which earlier was used to be known as the Jabhat al Nusra, which was the front of Al Qaeda in Syria. Later, the Jabhat al Nusra, they separated from the Al Qaeda under the leadership of uh, Muhammad al Jolani, or he's also being known by the Ahmad al Shara. So some of the challenges that he faces, that happens to be the security concerns. Even though the HTS controls the majority of the cities, if you look at the northeastern part of Syria, that is still held by the Kurdish forces, as well as HTS has a limited number of forces, and it is also still fighting against the ISIS, or the people who were the supporters of the the government itself, the Assad government. As well as the HTS, we see that the HTS is also in constant struggle with the Alawites, who were the strongest supporters to the Assad. So some of the fears that we see is the, as I said, fear of Islamist rule, because the Jabhat al-Nusra was a hardline, the face of the Al-Qaeda in Syria. Minority anxiety about the Alawites. We are seeing that the attacks are happening on the Alawites. In the last month itself, more than 1,500 Alawites were killed by the HTS forces. as well as it also, the desire for the inclusion, will it happen or not? Can you see the very clearly Syria's ethno religious puzzle, where the Sunni Arabs are controlling certain area, the Alawites, who happens to be the Shia uh, followers of the Shia Islam. Similarly, we also have the Christians, Kurds, the Druze, who have, and part right now in the mountain areas. So as a result, whether due to the presence of all these complexities, whether we will be able to see a prosperous Syria under the rule of HTS. Can you see the different forces that are controlling the Syria right now? Some of the, I mean, as I said very clearly, the northeastern part is being held by the Kurdish forces, that is the democratic forces. Then we see that in the south, we see the forces that are part, the forces of the HTS are under the control. Similarly, we also see that some of the areas are held by the Syrian National Army, which are backed by the Turkey. So even till now, there are certain areas which are held by the different groups. At the same time, we also see that ISIS also wants to regain its lost territory. I mean, at its peak in a 2014, ISIS controlled nearly 30% of the Syria, along with 40% of the Iraq. Now the ISIS wants to regain its stronghold areas. So we see that the ISIS is in a constant struggle with both the Kurdish forces as well as the HTS forces. So that is one thing that we need to be seen. And the majority of the concern is coming from Syria being a battlefield for the two major nations. One happens to be the Turkey, another one happens to be the Israel. So what we are seeing is that the both Turkey and Israel, I mean, wants to control the Syria. Turkey has its own I mean, the ambitions, where Turkey wants to regain its lost glory of the Ottomans. I mean, it wants to become this de facto ruler of the Ummah itself, and wants to challenge the Saudi Arabia. Whereas Israel has its own concerns, because the concerns of Israel are that through the Iraq, the through the part of a southern Syria, can you see here very clearly? Through the Iran and through the southern part of Syria, the arms are being supplied to the Lebanon. Lebanon has been challenging the the rule in the Israel. So the Israel is carrying out the airstrikes against all the military depot or all the airfield. One such attacks, I mean, till now, I mean, with the fall of the Assad, Israel has carried out more than 1,000 plus airstrikes, and it in fact has destroyed an airfield which is being, where the Turkey wanted to field its own missile defense system in T4 or the Palmyra. So we see this struggle between the Israel as well as the Turkey. If they are not able to come to a conclusion where they see give and take relation in Syria, Syria is going to become a battlefield for the Israel as well as the uh, Turkey. Some of the other risks that are posed by, as I said, about the SDF, which holds the northeastern past, and the role of US matters too, and the potential US is decided to withdraw from it. So what it needs, first one, I mean, sanctions needs to be relieved, because even to the day, I mean, HTS is recognized as a terrorist organization by all the Western countries. The sanctions that were imposed on the Syria needs to be lifted. The first one, negotiations with the Turkey matters, because the Turkey plays a very important role with regard to the Syria, and it has been playing an active role since the outbreak of the Syrian civil war. So the international support for the rebuilding the Syria, which has been destroyed, ravaged by the Syrian civil war and the war with the ISIS and all these conditions matter a lot. So for the next 8 months are very important for the Syria. So we are going to see whether we will be able to have a peaceful Syria, the Syria where all the religious minorities along with the majority can they coexist. That matters the most, along with the peace between the Israel as well as Turkey is very important feature of the peaceful Syria. So that's it in this particular video session. Thank you.